All right, we are at our C45 roaster, Diedrichs drum roaster, and we are going to go through the level 2 automation process for starting the roaster. Diedrichs has it set up so that you can have passwords, so everyone has a login and a password, and you can have different levels of security for your password so that those people who you want to be able to change profiles can, and those that you don't want to mess with it won't be able to have access. We will type in our password, and it takes us back out to this screen, and then we log on again. We have 427 hours, just over that, on this particular roaster since we've had it in April of 2003. The access for this particular employee is level 7. We will go into the System button, and in here we have buttons that will do everything. We can cut on the destoner, the agitator, the cooler air, the roasting air, and so forth. We will go in, the first thing we will do is click on the Start Roaster, and it will get loud, so hopefully you can keep hearing me. The Start Roaster button cuts on all the blowers for the roaster, the afterburner. Once those get going, I cut on the Start Gas button. It will start the afterburner gas, and in a few seconds you'll hear this gas click on, the roaster gas click on. There it goes. Once the gas is on, I always go to manual operation to begin with. That way I can set my air at 30%, which is just where I like to set it, and I can set my gas at 30%. So I hit medium to take it to 50%, and then I go to the down arrow until I get to 30. The reason I set it at 30 is I don't want it to get too hot and then shut off. Once the roaster reaches 460 degrees, it automatically shuts down all burners, even to the afterburner. So usually what I found is if I cut the gas on, the fuel at 30, the air at 30, which is where I like to start all my roasts, then I can walk away and then let it build up to about 300 degrees. Now I've already cut this roaster on and it's already hot, so you'll notice this blue line is my 30% of air capacity right now. This red line is where the temperature was when I turned off the roaster just a few minutes ago. Actually, it was 6 minutes ago. This is your time down here. This is 0 minutes, there's 5 minutes, 6, and so forth. This is your afterburner temperature right here, and this is the temperature of the roast right now. Up here we have the green bean temperature, the temperature in the hopper, in the drum, and your finished temperature where you drop it. Here's the actual time of the roast. So as this is on, I've noticed that I'm going to be inching up to 260 degrees. While this is warming up, since the roaster is already hot, we'll be able to roast soon. I'm going to dump the green beans in this way.
I gotta get down. I can't see your head.
My daughter Leland's filming this. This is 25 pounds of green beans. The roaster will do up to 100, but really 25 is the least I like to go. So this coffee will roast a little faster than say 100 pounds, but it'll be a good representation. Now, once I'm ready to roast, I'll come back to the main screen. I notice that my temperature is at 271, and since I'm ready to roast now, I'm going to increase my gas capacity to 50%. And then I'm going to load my green beans into the green bean hopper. And that will take a few minutes, and it will be real loud. When I do my initial roast, I always like to start the air at 30%, and I do 70% on fuel. When the roaster gets to 400 degrees, press start cycle, hopper loads. I always like to bang on it. There's always a few beans up here. And then we just wait for it to roast. We'll come back in a few minutes. Right now the roaster is dropping the bean temperature. And since since this is my first roast, I can increase the temperature to max. And that should give me about a 2-minute time before the bean temperature bottoms out and starts on its ascent up. The bean temperature has reached a bottom. It started climbing back up at 190. It's been 1 minute and 50 seconds. I'm going to decrease my fuel value to 70%. Once again, this is just my personal preference. And actually, this is what I normally do. For your roast, this is a Colombian light. I'll go ahead and go down to 60% because we want to extend the roast a little longer. Or at least I would. I do. So we'll let this go for 2 or 3 minutes, and when we get to 5 minutes, we'll check it again and try to get our good curve to where we drop this. Normally, I like to keep my roast temperature between 14 and 16 minutes. We'll roast this. We'll just see what happens. I'm going to roast this light, so I'm going to probably roast this to about 420 or 425, 430 degrees Fahrenheit. Once the bean temperature gets over 300, I usually turn the air through the roaster up to 50%, and then later on I'll cut that up to 65%, depending on what kind of roast. But all that's doing is pulling air out of the roasting and pulling the chaff back to the chaff collector, the cyclone. Right now we're at 6.5 minutes. Our temperature is 345 degrees. We're aiming for about 430, so we're going a little fast, I think. So I'm going to cut this down, the fuel down to mid 50%. Naturally, when you're roasting on this machine, at about this temperature, the temperature of the bean will start rising slower if you keep the fuel value at the same rate. And I just want to slow it down early so that when we get to 400, I'm over 10 minutes. But as you can see now, we're at 7 minutes and 35 seconds. We're at 365 to 62 degrees. All right, here we go. Alright, when the bean temperature reaches 400, I'm going to cut my roast air up to 65%. You can do more or less. Really, you can go as high as you want, and eventually you'll hear, if you go too high, you'll hear beans getting sucked into the chaff collector. I'm going to cut my agitator on, not my cooler blower, but my agitator. We're still in manual mode. We're still climbing pretty good, but we're starting to level off, so we're slowing down the roast a little. And I'm going to leave it at 50%, even though we're just over 10 minutes. We'll be through this roast in a couple minutes, which is faster than I usually do, but we really could have finished this roast already by now, easily within 10 minutes. As it gets closer to my finished temperature, I'll cut down my value some more, slow it down a little more, give me a little longer roast, get a little more darkness. There we go. Pretty light roast right there. The last thing I'll do before I stop the cycle, is I'll cut on the cooler blower. I'm going for about 425. I'm going to drop this in just a minute. I'm going to cut my gas off, so all the way to minimum. My color looks good, so we'll drop the roast.